Hello, everybody. So a few months ago, the Carillion Foundation newsletter had an article featuring Tom and Mary Evelyn Tielking for their work, patronage, and support of the Healing Arts Program. Some of you may have seen this article on the bulletin board. This is one example of talent and diversity of our community. So to follow through on this idea, we've invited Tom and Mary Evelyn to share some of their reflections. And so today's format will be an interview hosted by another of our resident talents, Miss Debbie Miller. Debbie?
Well, we're glad to see all of you here, and the front seats are empty, and you will not be called upon to perform or do anything if you sit in them. But today's program really has a double billing. In the first place, it was first advertised as From Smarts to Arts, but our presenters were not happy with that. So the real title is The Arts, Delight, Inspiration, and Comfort for Life. Take your pick. But we're here to have a double treat also, because we have two presenters, and they're married, of course, and they will each bring strength to the program. They may be somewhat under the radar here, but in the community, they've made a big difference. So let's get started. And Tom, give us a little insight as to your background, where you went to school, how you met, and that sort of thing.
Well, I was born in Port Huron, Michigan, which is a city about 60 miles north of Detroit. It's at the lower end of Lake Huron. Can you close? How about now? Now? Okay. I was born in Port Huron, Michigan, a city about 60 miles north of Detroit, at the lower end of Lake Huron, and across a river from the St. Clair River from Canada. And there was a lot of interaction between people in Canada and people in Michigan. I remember growing up having probably at least a third of my friends were Canadians, and went back and forth with great ease. It is now not nearly as convenient to do that. I graduated from Port Huron High School in 1957. And my continuing education was at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And it was there that I met Mary Evelyn fairly early in our career. I think she was in her first semester there, and she'll tell you more about it. There were none other for us. We dated and really enjoyed each other's company, and finally we were married in a church adjacent to the Michigan campus. Michigan had facilities at that time for married students, which we moved into, and had a lot of friends there. I think I'll pass this on to Mary Evelyn.
That's probably more than you really wanted to know. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and as Tom said, we met in Ann Arbor. And Ann Arbor had so many artistic things going, as anybody who's ever been there for any period of time. I remember as an undergraduate, I remember at one point Arthur Rubinstein came to play, and he gave 3 concerts, and I went to all of them. And one of them I actually paid for. Another one, I don't know, someone took me. I don't think it actually was Tom, but anyway, someone took me to it. And the other one I volunteered to usher, so I just couldn't miss those. I mean, this is supposed to be about our interest in arts, and And mine actually just started at home as a child because my mother had been a musician. And although she wasn't doing that at the time, never did that anymore as when I was living with her, still, she had gone to conservatory, and so she was still interested, and we listened to the radio. I had to listen to all the symphony concerts that the NBC Symphony Orchestra did with Toscanini, and I had to listen to the opera every Saturday afternoon. I have often wondered how I ever still really like opera, but because I was just so anxious to get out and play, I just loved to hear Carmen scream because that meant that I could go out. But so I was introduced to the arts at a very young age, and so via music mostly. But of course, Detroit had a great art museum and lovely libraries, and then. And we went. My mother took me. She was very fond of ballet because she knew quite a few ballerinas because she played often for the Bolshoi Ballet, and so she really loved ballet. So whenever the Sadler's Wells came to Detroit, or what was it, the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo came, which she would always tell me, well, they don't have a very good corps de ballet, but they have Danilova, and so we go to see Danilova. Okay. So that my introduction to the arts was through my family, really. And Tom really didn't say anything about his introduction to the arts.
It was through you.
That's what he always says. Then when we finished college, during our college years, I don't think we were terribly involved in the arts except for going to concerts and things like that, but not really involved in any way. But then when we moved to Texas, Tom was teaching at Texas A&M University, and Bryan College Station, as Bob would probably acknowledge, really didn't have a whole lot of arts there. But they did have the Brazos Valley Symphony Orchestra, which was basically a volunteer orchestra. Somehow, and I don't exactly really remember how this happened, but somehow I got on that board. So I was on the board of the Brazos Valley Symphony Orchestra for, several years, I guess. And but then when we moved here, I don't remember what the first thing was that we did that way. But one of the things is that one of the questions that Debbie had, but I guess I'm going to preempt her. She asked, why did you come to Roanoke? Because we came here very deliberately to retire here. I didn't want to stay in Texas, and Tom didn't want to go back to Michigan, and so we had to find another place that we would both enjoy. And so we decided we wanted to be in the mid-Atlantic area, and we went around very deliberately to different towns. We didn't want to be in a big city, so to different towns, and staying long weekends there and that sort of thing, actually looking for the place we wanted to retire. And actually our son introduced us to Virginia in that sense. He was going to graduate school at UVA at the time, and he said, come to Virginia. You'll like it because it's mostly just spring and fall here. And that somehow, doesn't really work anymore, but it did at the time. And so that's how, but we did look a lot of other places and a lot of towns about the same size as Roanoke, because that's the size we were thinking about. And Roanoke came out on top, and they came out on top for us because of the arts that were here. I mean, there was an opera company, 2 ballets. I mean, I couldn't understand how a town this size could actually handle 2 ballets, but they do. And the symphony, of course, and a museum, and just various kinds of things. And a lot of the places that we looked at that were the same size really didn't have much, So that was really what turned the page for us as to where we were going to stay. So I remember that was 1999, or actually, we had been doing this for a couple of years, going to various places. So, but in 1999, then we decided on Roanoke. But before we decided, finally, February of that year, we came here for the month of February because we thought, well, if it's nice in February, it'll be okay. I mean, February is a yucky month usually for anywhere. So, but it was fine. It actually even snowed while we were here a little bit, and that was good too. And we went to a symphony orchestra program. We went to a Kandinsky trio program. We went to, and we looked at the museums. I don't know. Anyway, we liked it. So then we went home and put the house up for sale, and we were here by August. So that's our story about how we came to Roanoke, and it really had to do with the offerings in the arts for us. I should let you talk something. Say something.
I think we should let Debbie. Yeah, another question.
I was going to say, I didn't hear you mention, Mary Evelyn, your stint as a classical disc jockey on a radio.
Right. Yeah, one of the things I did in Texas, actually, I worked for the small university radio station. I mean, the university wasn't small. Texas A&M is huge, but the radio station was very small. And so I did a stint I actually did it as a volunteer, as a disc jockey for with a classical music program. And I will have to admit to you, that was one of my favorite volunteer jobs I ever had. And they had a very small collection of classical music CDs because they were just using what they call canned programs, these programs that they're syndicated programs, and they're just canned and you put them on. But they were kind of going into a financial slump there, and they couldn't afford those canned programs anymore, so they had put out this, I remember, I was on the Friends of the station, and we had a meeting, and the station manager said, we really would like to have some volunteers do some of these programs, and I thought, maybe I could do that. So naturally, I got the job. But it really was a very fun job. I not only did it increase my CD collection, because I got to keep the CDs when I had to buy them, because I had to go buy CDs because they didn't have hardly anything to play. But what it did for them to have a program that was initiated on that side, they then got CDs from the record companies. Because when you hear an ad or, fundraiser for the radio station and they say, your money will pay for the music, your money doesn't pay for the music. They get the music from the record companies, and it's in accordance to how much of that kind of programming you do on your own. And those syndicated programs, see, didn't count for that. So that's why they didn't have hardly any CDs, any classical music CDs. So I bought a lot of CDs, which I then got to keep at the end, and they got more because the companies then gave it to them. So yeah, that's right.
Sounds like a win-win for
yes,
both you and
it was.
and
it
them.
really was. Yeah.
Well, and before we focus entirely on music, Tom, I believe you indicated to me that your major field was engineering mechanics as opposed to mechanical engineering. Just say a bit about that, if you would.
Well, that's a field that at the time when I was at... Okay. Can you all hear this? At the time when I was at the University of Michigan, there was a separate department of engineering mechanics. And many of the Big Ten schools, the so-called research universities, had such departments. They were small, but they focused on deeper understanding of certain aspects of engineering. Fluid mechanics, for example, was one thing that if you were in engineering mechanics, you could specialize in fluid mechanics, and they would have faculty members that were really the experts, the top people in their